So Dave. I'll say I'm in full agreement. Yeah, it's.
We're live streaming.
So we are live streaming, we'll just wait for councillors. Harriet the Karakia. Okay, I think Councillor Johnson's arriving soon. She left her glasses in her car. She can't find them. I think we'll make a start. Welcome everybody, if we can stand for karakia.
Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tae, kia hea kia mā te atākura, i heo, he uka, he hauhu, te hei mauriora. Mauriora.
I don't see anyone downstairs looking forward.
She's blindly looking for
So welcome everybody to our council meeting, and you have the agenda in front of you. So first of all, sorry, I apologise for my croakiness. I can assure you I am now COVID negative, so there's no fear of me spreading anything. Item number 2 on the agenda of conflicts of interest, members to declare conflicts if any. Sorry? Whatever drone, that's noted. The next item on the agenda is public forum. We have nobody to speak in public forum. The next item, before I go to late items, after discussions with the Chief Exec and advice from staff in which I'm full agreement with, I'm going to remove from the agenda item number 12, the civic facility reverse brief and next steps. So we know that this is an important issue for our community. The paper was delivered late. I think councillors would have received it early yesterday evening. So apologies for that. As you are aware, not only have I had COVID, but our Chief Exec has as well, and he returned to work yesterday. So that was the reasoning behind the late paper. I certainly appreciate the amount of work that required for staff, and in particular our Chief Exec, to be able to get that paper out at all, but accept that the time frame may not be have been sufficient for councillors, or that it be publicly available in a timely way. So the item number 12 is removed from the agenda. I will withdrawn from the agenda. I will come back to that later in the meeting. Just trying to, we'll have a resolution on an alternative day that we can pick up that item, but I need to discuss that all with you on people's availability. Okay, so moving on to item number 5, late items. There are none. Item number 6, items to be considered under section 48(1)A of Lagoima, the minutes of the council meeting with the public excluded on the 6th of April, minutes of the extraordinary meeting on the 27th of April, and the Chief Exec's 6-monthly review. So could I have somebody move that we consider those items in public excluded? Thank you, Councillor Hines, seconded by Councillor Peterson. Okay, any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion is carried. Moving on now to item number 7, confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting held on the 6th of April. So you have those minutes in front of you. Is there any corrections to those minutes? If there are not, could I have somebody move that that is a true and accurate record of the meeting? Please. Moved by Councillor Ryan, seconded by Councillor Nixon. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion is carried. Moving on now to the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on the 27th of April. And once again, I will ask if there's any corrections to those minutes. There appears to be not, so could I have somebody move? It's a true and accurate record. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Nelson. All those in favour, please say aye.
I don't think Bex was there at that meeting.
Yeah.
So all the trustees that didn't attend, or I got the wrong one?
No, you are absolutely right. Thank you, Councillor Mailman. 10 out of 10. So moved
That
by...
doesn't happen very often.
Moved by... Are you happy to move that, Councillor Nelson?
Yep.
And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Gear. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion is carried. Moving on now to the next item, confirmation of minutes. Oh, sorry, the report of the Infrastructure and Services Committee on Wednesday the 27th of April. I'll hand over to Chair, Councillor Johnson, to take us through the report.
I'll take the report as read, and just noting that there was quite an in-depth update on Hori Aerodrome, which is progressing well, and also the animal shelter, which we've since had further information on, and waiting an update on the design and listing, and also on the Colombo Road Bridge, which is in effect and working well, apparently thanks to Councillor Nelson's report back. So I'd like to move that.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Johnson. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Gear. Is there any questions of the Chair to the report? There appears to be none, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, the motion is carried. Moving on now to item number on the agenda. Item number 10, the dog registration, dog fees 2022-2023, page 121 of the agenda. I will hand over to Stephen to take us through this report. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Chair, I'd like to propose that the paper is accepted as read. I'd just like to draw the Council's attention to one of the recommendations for the proposed fees is that the Council's revenue and finance policy last year had a ratio of 15% ratepayer funded, 75% user fees as the structure for the animal control team. Last year, Council was right in making a decision to increase the ratepayer funding to 20% and 80% ratepayer, 80% cost recoverable. So this year, this proposal is to maintain that the proposal to council is to maintain that 80-20% proportional payment rate, but again it's deferring from the finance and revenue policy. Council has the power to continue that decision, and Mr. David Paris is available to talk about the review of the revenue and finance policy that has to happen in the LTP year, if that's acceptable to Council today.
Thank you, Stephen. So is there any questions from the report? No, there appears to be none. Oh, sorry, Councillor Caffel.
We wish we not. It's a question, but I guess I get up on this this particular subject all the time, and I think that you and I had a crack at this last year ourselves, both of us actually. It seems to me really difficult to understand as a dog owner why the fees between Masterton and Carlton and South Wairarapa are so different. I mean, I know that the level of service is greater here and whatever, but that's one hell of a difference when you look at the Masterton dog owners are paying $25 and $23 more respectively than Carlton, and $69 and $59, I think, to South Wairarapa. The difference in fees is quite considerable, and it just seems to me that that from the point of view of owning a dog is almost becoming almost unreasonable in Masterton compared to the other two. So I would like to see us somehow or other work on a system where we could bring this a lot closer, because when you look at the difference between the two, it is very significant.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other Councillor Holmes?
Well, the only way you're going to make a difference is to amalgamate. See, Gary? I don't disagree. The rural dogs are cheaper here, and quite a lot.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other? Councillor Johnston?
There's a suggestion in the paper that the only way the fees could be reduced was either to increase the percentage the user pays, as Stephen's iterated, or look at the level. Or look at the level of service. So my question would be: we offer a 24-hour service 7 days a week, and which is fantastic. But I just wonder how much of that time is. Well, it's a bit like the swimming pool. How much use is the swimming pool at certain hours of the day, and how much demand is on the team at certain times of the week or certain hours of the night? That would just be my question.
Just through the chair, Councillor, it's hard to gauge right now an answer to your question, but the service, a dog attack at any time during the day is serious enough for our community and requires a response. But I'd have to do some detailed data processing to find out, what attacks happening at what point in the night. But again, a dog attack or an animal attack at 2 in the morning still needs a response. So it's one of those situations we may not get an attack, but we're also responsible legislatively to have a response and keep our community safe. Can I just make a correction? I think I verbally said that the finance and revenue policy was 75% and 15%, but it's actually 75% and 25% ratepayer funded in the revenue and financing policy. Last year, Council recommended and approved it go to 80-20%.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there any other questions on the report? Okay, I note the report, note the comments of Councillor Caffel, but also agree you either reduce the amount that ratepayers pay if you want to reduce the cost to dog owners, or you drop the level of service. So that's always a difficult, who carries the burden. Given the amount of Masterton's had 1,272 call-outs, whereas South Wairarapa's had 175 and complaints, and Carterton 281 dog-related complaints. I think the differential between the two is quite small given that level of service. So if there's no further discussion or debate on it, I'm happy to move the recommendation, I'll put it as a motion, that we receive the report. We adopt the proposed dog registration fees and associated fees for 2022-2023 and acknowledge that the 20% portion of the proposed dog registration fees to be funded by rates is consistent with the 2021 council decision. Okay, so I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ryan. Is there any further discussion? There is not. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Motion is carried. Okay, moving on now to item number 11 on the agenda, the Morrisville West Lutheran Cemetery on page 134 of the agenda. And Kelsey, are you speaking to this?
Yeah, thank you. Kia ora everybody. I'll take the report as read. So just confirming in September 2020, Council agreed in principle.
Kelsey, you might need to speak up, particularly
Council agreed in principle to accept the transfer of ownership for ongoing care and administration subject to community consultation. So that consultation has since taken place, and the outcome of that was the community supported closing the burial ground as a denominational burial ground and opening it as a community cemetery. So I'm happy to take the questions.
Thank you, Kelsey. So the report is there. If there is any questions on the report? There appears to be not. Is there someone to move the recommendations or to move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Mailman, seconded by Councillor Nelson. The motion is now there under 134, page 134. So I'll just put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item, well, it's 13 on the agenda. Update on future for local government Wairarapa. Local governance Wairarapa, page 139. I'm not sure, it's this Chief Exec speaking to this report.
Again, so I'll take the report as read. It's the report that's been worked through with the other meetings and the three councils that Councillor Nixon and Councillor Gear have been involved in, and recommendations around the future of local government in Wairarapa. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, you have the report in front of you. The recommendation is that the council receives the update on Wairarapa future for local governance meetings. The minutes of those meetings are attached. Is there any questions that councillors have of the report? Right.
I was just wanting to know if there was any mention of co-governance in the review of local government.
I'll defer that to the Chief Exec or the members of the meeting.
We discussed the governance representation and how that was, what are the options, but we haven't settled on anything, so it was just part of the discussions.
Okay, any other questions? No, and we see there on page 145, I think that the actions there, I think is that from the last meeting, I think in April, was to table the minutes at respective council meetings with a view to picking this up after the local body elections in October 2022. And that is at the time when the panel for future for local government are due to present their report to government. Okay, so someone to move that we receive the update? Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconder, Councillor Peterson. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say that this is, I think it's a really solid piece of work. and has already been recognised by the Future of Local Government Committee as we're one of the only areas that is actually doing some of this sort of stuff, and looking at what we can do ahead of the central government push to look at what the future of local government is. So I think it's brave, and we've got a really good group of people around the table, and a really good team approach to looking through those issues so that we come out best at the end of this process.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so I'll put a motion that we receive the update. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion is carried. Moving on now to item number 14, the Chief Exec's report. So I'm handing over to you, David.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome new staff member. Assets and operations role has been vacant for a while. We have now filled the position. We've got Mr. Mike Berger has joined the council. This is his second week, so he will take over that role, and there's a lot of work to be done in that space.
Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with council and servicing the community.
Thank you. I know the Chief Exec is very pleased to have you here after wearing a dual role for too many months.
I will take the report as read. There's a number of things to highlight there, particularly the three water decision that has occurred since the last council report. The government cabinet has adopted the recommendations, with the exception of three around. So those recommendations came from the government's working group that Mayor Patterson was on. Three of those recommendations weren't accepted around central government funding of continued work. The recommendation was that basically the entity should fund all that work. But the remaining recommendations around governance, around the shareholding were adopted. There is legislation intended to be presented to the House, tabled in the House next month, or the next couple of months. That will be our opportunity to provide feedback through the Select Committee process. For such an important, significant piece of legislation, we will be involved in, we will be making a submission on that. There will be multiple submissions from different groups. So we will keep you abreast of that, but first of all we need to see what the final shape of the legislation. They have indicated, the government has also indicated that there will be separate legislation packages coming in the later in the year to deal with stormwater and three waters. That is very much a reflection on how complicated this process is going to be, and reflecting the multiple challenges that the rural sector, the rural water supplies and stormwater will have in this new entity. So we're acutely aware of that. There has been information since I wrote the report before I got sick around the Standard & Poor's funding position, indicating that the first indications are that the credit ratings will be suitable for borrowing additional money. However, they also have made the caveat that that work will be reviewed just before the legislation is tabled, so we'll be waiting for that. We've had a number of other documents released in the last few weeks around sea level rise, updates and that, and of course big issues are the National Adaptation Plan consultation for emissions in primary industries. So there's a lot of policy work being developed by this government that we've been asked to comment on, and it's landed. Certainly there's a lot of change happening in this nationally and impacting local government. I think that's basically it. Open to any questions.
Thank you, David. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
With regards to Three Waters, David, I'm a little confused because initially as a council we voted as a majority to that with the community for local democracy that we were opposed to the model, and yet then since we've had encouragement from government to apply for funding by the 30th of September for the first tranche of payment with regards to handing over council's water assets. So to my mind we're seen opposed to it on principle but happy to put the other hand out for the money. So wouldn't that not be best served for the incoming council to progress forward and make decisions on?
Well, firstly, the tranche one, or the better off funding, was announced last month. This council hasn't made any decisions about adopting that. We will be talking and presenting some information. There is an agreement being circulated, which we've circulated to elected members. Certainly there's some fish hooks in that, and the whole industry has recognised those fish hooks. Those, the Minister has committed to reviewing some of those concerns, and so we're expecting an updated agreement around what that better off funding will obligate us to do. So once that we get that, we'll share it with you, and we will also then bring a recommendation to this council whether we accept that. We will need to address that very question. So while it's on the table, we haven't actually progressed accepting that. The other point there is the first tranche needs to be adopted or accepted or applied for, before the election. So we have no, the timing of that is specific. So if we do want to apply for that first tranche, we need to do it before the election.
Is that a follow-up?
Yeah, just one more question further to that though. If the first tranche of money isn't applied for, is it then dead and buried?
No, that money, the indication at the moment is that money would subsequently go into the second tranche, which is the 15 million. However, the government, the opposition has been very clear that they would potentially not support that second payment, and so we would be at a potential risk of losing that if the government changed. So there's a lot of a lot of councils are struggling with exactly this issue. How we're going to deal with it. The councils are just starting to putting their positions forward and looking at how they're going to apply. We will be in that position in a few weeks' time, so we'll be talking and bringing information to council with the next steps.
And just one more question, sorry. Is it correct that public consultation or submissions on Three Waters reform will be through central government, not through local government?
Yeah, it is. This is not a local government reform. This is not something that the council actually has any decision-making power in. This is being done to us by central government, and their decision is the only way that they are receiving public feedback is through the select committee process. So yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holmes, and then Councillor.
I brought it up at the previous meeting, but I'm absolutely shocked with the water services bill that's going through, which is part 3 waters, and it's really going to affect us dreadfully here. It'll affect us with our take at Wainawa. It'll affect us with every bore that goes in the area, and it probably will affect us with our disposal at Homebush as well, because it's underground water. So I just cannot believe that anybody could ever write anything like this bill has been written, or what they're proposing. And they're talking about consent for 40 to 60,000 for a bore and $100,000 $1 million of costs for the industry and affect most farms in the catchment. Like, it's horrendous. So I think we really need to oppose this and follow up on it, David. And I'd like us to have a workshop, if we could, on this business that we're talking about. Affects water supplies, one area of water supply, Paki, everybody will be affected, so I'm concerned about it.
I just sought clarification. I was a bit unsure of what bill. This is a regulatory.
It's part of this.
So what the council's referring to is the new regulatory bill that's been passed, setting up the Tomato Atua, and also the regulations that they've been empowered to set. So while the bill is passed, the regulations and the framework for complying with the requirements of the bill are in development at the moment. The key issue there is the water safety plan, which is what the councillor was referring to, and the requirements that those water safety plans will have on adjacent land, and how land has to be secured and protected, limiting what you can do on that land. With those issues are still in public consultation, so there's still a discussion, but you're right, they're going to have far-reaching implications potentially on how they get implemented and what's required. Certainly Fed farmers are taking the view that an appropriate risk, I don't think they're proposing that we do nothing around catchment management, because that was the problem that happened at Hastings. However, appropriate risk mitigation into these plans is what they we'd be proposing, and certainly we are watching this area because it has implications for the whole country, not just the rural area.
Thanks. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Gafel and then to Ra.
Your Worship, just in recent days we've seen one or two articles where other councils are looking to move workshops into the public arena, and I think that this would be an absolute ideal opportunity for us to start doing that. The discussions on these three waters reforms, actually, that the workshops be open to the public so that the public can also be kept up to date with what's happening. As I say, there's a hell of a lot of interest out there, and it just seems to me that this is one area where we could keep the public totally informed by having them involved in our workshops.
Just adding to that, Councillor Gafel, I understand that, and it was raised through the working group about the communication that central government needs to be doing with our communities. One of the issues that we have at the moment is there's nothing actually, we need to wait for the select committee process, and that is the process that we and the public have to start to push, to put forward our views. I mean, we can have a workshop to discuss what's in the bill once it's drafted.
Your Worship, well, I said it slightly differently, that I believe that the public actually want to hear what we around the table here is going to say. And therefore, if the workshops were open, they would get an idea of what each one of us think about these three waters reforms, and I think that it's such a big interest that they'd actually like to hear that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Your Worship, I actually totally agree with Councillor Gafel. What we know is what the community should know, and they should know what we don't know, and they should go to also know what we would like to know. And the fact that we haven't had questions answered, there's a whole raft of stuff around this that both us and the community are not well informed on. And even people like me who have tried really hard to keep up with what's actually happening are still struggling with the type of information that we're getting, the speed that we're getting it, the variability of it. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we have public workshops to at least explain to the community exactly where we're at right now and the information that we have right now and the varying views around the table on these issues.
Okay, no, I think we're
And I'd also like to add that one of the key issues that's coming out, and David Holmes may want to talk to this because he's actually had a look at the seminar, is the rural issues are really, really serious. and we're only just starting to get some information around that at the moment.
Okay, I'll go to Ra first and then come back to you, David.
I'd just like to ask a question from page 134. What does it mean to embrace? To the North Ward?
Sorry, what?
Page 134.
Recognise 146, the last one.
Recognise and embrace. I'm pretty sure I know what recognise means. I'm just a little interested in embrace.
Yeah. This was taken straight out of DIA's outcome. So that is what they've concluded is the outcome of. So no, I couldn't answer that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Holmes and then to Tito.
I get concerned about everything going to the Select Committee. I've been following the High Country leasehold and the animal welfare bills that have been going through Parliament at the moment, and quite frankly the submitters are not being listened to at all, and that's what concerns me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tito.
Sorry, I just had a question in regards to Morley Park. Sorry,
What page are you on?
151.
151.
And that was because there was quite a bit of an uptake, and I wanted to know if there was any data around homelessness or emergency housing for that particular park, because if the revenue's up on that and they've got a long-term contract, then we also need to address that, long-term as well. So I don't know any more information other than this short paragraph, really, and that's something of concern to me.
Okay, I'm not sure, is Corin here?
Yeah.
Oh.
So what's the information, sorry, through the chair, what was the information you were after in particular in regards to Morley?
Just, you've got a long-term contract, and I was wanting to know, is that due to, emergency housing, and or is it addressing that, or because the revenue's gone up, or?
So this particular one is actually to do with business doing some business in Masterton for during the winter.
But is that indicative of not being able to find housing?
Absolutely, it's indicative of, so it's not a homelessness issue, but it's certainly an issue in terms of getting rental accommodation in Masterton at the moment is really difficult, absolutely. So businesses coming into our community are struggling to find places to actually accommodate their staff.
Right, so is that not, if we want to promote growth or economic growth here, then do we not need to address this in a way that's going to accommodate these businesses, and or if there is because we do have a growing and emergency housing issues, how is this going to be addressed? Because this is not going to go away, and we don't have Morley Park for all this. There are probably other places that are being utilised, like camping grounds that are that will be struggling to maintain their own infrastructure as well with the growth of people struggling to find housing.
I think it's a valid point you raised, Tito, and what I'm going to, and which is why we're promoting the Panama issue. I mean, that's longer term. Maybe one of what we can do is get some information from MSD, who manage the emergency housing, and talk to community housing providers like Trust House and Emerge, and get some more up-to-date data. It's a New Zealand-wide issue.
I just understand that there's a number of campgrounds that are coming into winter that won't be able to adequately service families that are struggling to find homes because they are usually a seasonal place.
Yes.
Whereas, and so what's being done to address some of the maintenance and infrastructure that's going to be required for this, because this is going to be a long-term issue. And if council can address or even just sort of gain some data on that, how do we then, what's the next steps going forward? I know that we've got the regional leadership group that's looking at these issues, but I don't see much action happening.
Yeah, I wish I had the answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Corin, I don't know whether we can add any more to that for Morley, in regards to Morley Park, in the sense that it's Morley Park is there. We maintain our camping ground to a fairly high standard for those that may be there, but I don't know about the ability to increase that, any further housing there.
So we can look into what that would look like. I mean, obviously all of these things come with associated costs as we develop, and we've got a maintenance plan around Morley as it is, and it's got that combination of paved area down one end where we've got a lot of camping vehicles and stuff like that, and tenting down the other end. But we can certainly explore those sorts of issues.
Oh, and the reason why I say about the infrastructure is because we had a flooding event, and that was actually impacted, but it wasn't actually due to the flood itself, it was due to the capacity. So, that's something that we kind of need to look, and forecast forward so that we can try to address these issues. I understand around Morley Park, but there's other camping grounds that are probably going to be impacted that aren't, that we don't really know about. So I don't know if that's it's adding to your workload, but it's about understanding throughout the Wairarapa region the impacts. Because when it comes to emergency housing, some of these families are there long term through MSD, and so it's just understanding what the lay of the land is. Because we've got young families that are struggling in small accommodation to try to, get housing, and it's not even businesses. So how can we promote growth with businesses here when we can't even address the housing and, to accommodate staff? Kia ora.
Kia ora te rau, and we will try and get some of that other data, but the way forward's not a clear path, so I hear what you say. Councillor Malman.
Yeah, just running the recent announcements around climate change action from the central government. How will that impact our plan going forward? I know it's too early to, you probably haven't had time to look at it.
The action plan that was announced yesterday.
Low emissions reduction plan.
That was announced yesterday. Yeah. No, we haven't had a time to fully analyse it. However, there are certain areas there that will be quite, will have big significance. One of them is food waste collection. Also transferring to electric fleets. Those are things that are in our action plan already, potentially, but certainly as the legislative environment changes, we might have to change our time frames on some of that. But no, we haven't had an ability to do anything other than look at what's in there.
Councillor Ryan and Councillor Nelson and then Councillor Johnson.
I'll just add to the climate change stuff. Most of what's come out in the report is stuff that the staff anticipated, and so it's been, Councillor Peterson and I are on there, has been discussed and is forming part of the plan. There was certainly no big surprises, and there wasn't. I'll just answer that there. But my question is actually about land transport rule. So, am I reading it right? Is the jurisdiction for speed management of state highway roads down to us now, down to officers?
So previously, all speed limits were set by the Road and Controlling Authority, which is this council, through a bylaw process. We had 73 sets of bylaws around the country determining speed limits in the networks. This new rule has come in. What they're looking at is taking away the need to have bylaws, having a centralised rule, a centralised register of all speed limits throughout the country. And also what they've done is changed how those speed limits can be changed. So it's still with the council to make recommendations on through their speed management plan, which is the next thing to develop. But those speed management plans will make recommendations on changing speed limits, given the information that we have on those roads, and then that will be adopted in a regional fashion. So they're looking at regionalising how those decisions are made, with the idea that you have a consistency around the region of how you approach speed limits. So this council will still be developing that speed management plan, but it will be adopted by a regional committee. That's the new rule framework. that has been put in place. Still talking with our councils about exactly how that's going to play out in this region and what the systems we're going to have, what groups. The rule's not clear on structures, so we have to set those up across the region, and also timing. When are we going to deliver these, and how are we going to interact with the rest? So there's a lot of work to be done around it, but I'll put that in the paper that this is quite a significant change. The councils for 100 years have had the privilege of setting bylaws on speed. It won't be. We will no longer have that ability. It will be through a more centralised process and having a speed driven by these speed management plans, which we will be consulting on.
It just seems like it's more of dismantling local government, doesn't it?
A cynical view could be that yes, a huge part of our bylaws have now been centralised, but we still, the way the rule is written, we still have a real role in determining how our network is set up, and we'll have some hard choices about investment, because what will come out of this is safer speeds versus higher safety rating or safer roads, and the costs associated with that. So there's going to be some tough calls.
Thank you, David. It was a good explanation.
Okay, is there any other further questions? Sorry, Tim. Sorry.
Thank you, Worship. With the library, the search training, is that in response to, on page 150, is that in response to an incident that's happened in the library? Or is it just being preemptive? Just around just interacting with the public safely? And is that something that will be offered to other council frontline staff, just following on from a discussion in the previous meeting?
Through the Chair, so it's not a response to a particular incident, but it is a response to an awareness that our staff in those spaces are dealing with increasing amounts of difficult interactions, and that is going on in our society. So that's a particular piece of training that's been put together in the library community. So it's targeted at libraries. So that's why the team are doing that. Ben will be able to answer the second part of the question, I think.
Yes, the Chair, we are looking at wider training across. This is becoming a theme around preparing our staff to have difficult conversations and so forth. So yes, it's something we're looking at.
Great, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Cora.
Yes.
Further to Gary and Tina's comments, I support more open discussion, and hence the reason why I directed some of those 3 waters questions, because we seem to know not a lot, but certainly a lot more than the general community, and I think we feel that we've been bulldozed, and so if we can take the community a bit more on the journey with us, whilst I appreciate that it's a central government directive, I'm sure that we can have a few more conversations with our public. But the other thing I wanted to note, a few good stories in the Chief Executive's report. One was the funding for e-resources in the reading program for the library, the outstanding pool award for Belgravia, and also the fantastic community-led council-supported mountain bike park project, and also the ongoing programs and community support around the skate park. I think there's some really great stuff happening in our community, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Ra?
Thank you. I'm just looking at those e-books as well, and I noticed that there's a difference between New Zealand history and the treaty collection. I wondered what the difference was. Perhaps one's for the curriculum and the other's just what you catch if you don't get it in the classroom. I did notice that the treaty collection had a test for reliability. I was wondering what that test was, and did the same test apply to the New Zealand history books?
Thank you, Ray. Let's put that question to Corin.
Through the Chair. Very good question, Ra, and nicely pointed out. Those provisions are done by the publishers, so The rationale for the way they've done them, I think, is only that they have made a concerted effort to bring together all the things that they can in respect of the treaty. But I would hope that there is not a division between New Zealand history and the treaty. And libraries and publishers in that space are usually pretty sensitive and good about that stuff. What qualifies as reliable is again a really good question. Should be things that are by respected authors who know their field and are known for publishing good quality works. And yes, reliable on both, I would hope.
Councillor Holmes.
I just wanted to mention service requests, and I had an example yesterday with a huge load of rubbish dumped down our road, and how good the council staff were getting that organised. Now that load of rubbish wasn't a trailer, as has been recorded, and it was a small truckload. It wasn't a trailer load of rubbish. And I've been lucky enough to find a T-shirt from it, which related to a shearing contractor in Australia. And I've been on the phone to him, and I'm doing the Sherlock Holmes stuff here, trying to track this dirty sod that chucked this rubbish on our road. I've also found another receipt with an address on it. Now, we have to get tough as a council. We've got to get tough on this because it's just completely unacceptable. That rubbish yesterday, there was a washing machine, you name it, it was there. And it was appalling. So I'm just pleading with officers, track these, I won't say it down, and let's do them. Make an example of them. We've got to do it because it's just a shambles. And I don't know why they go east all the time, but I believe they go to the riverbeds as well. So let's get on to it.
Okay, I'm sure the staff are hearing that very loud and clear, and I'm sure there would be support for others around the table for that, right?
I'd just like to commend the section on Kaitaka Wine and we're grateful for that, and especially the engagement there. If others are looking for open communication, they might follow the example of our Kaitaka Wine.
Okay, is there any further questions on the Chief Executive's report? There appears to be not, so I'm happy to move that we note the information contained in the report. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Holmes. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Now, moving on to the Mayor's report. Now, I wasn't quite as ahead of the game as the Chief Executive was, that he had his report done before he got COVID. So I hadn't, even though I did promise Harriet, our governance advisor, very faithfully that I was going to do a report this time, but COVID intervened, and that's and I just haven't had the time. And to be perfectly honest, up till yesterday, I haven't had a particularly high amount of energy to get on and do that. So I just made a note today, and it was just a few things. And I just acknowledge the emissions reduction plan that we heard about yesterday, and we wait for the budget announcements tomorrow to see what's been allocated through that and how it will impact on for our community in the long term. Also picking up from the Chief Exec's report the things with sea level rise and the our coast, Wairarapa coast, and what we may need to be doing for the future. So hopefully there's some direction and some funding allocation in the budget tomorrow. We also wait, and I understand there was a presentation at the Wairarapa Combined Council meeting on the Lower North Island Rail Integrated Mobility Plan. So absolute have fingers and toes crossed for some budget allocation for that. It's been heavily pushed by Greater Wellington Regional Council on behalf of us all, along with Horizons, and it's a very strong strategic investment that really aligns with the national and regional transport plans. So I really hope that will bring us some well, there'll be some allocation in the budget that will have a huge impact for the Wairarapa, and not only new trains but increased level of service. David and I had a presentation and a discussion with John Allen, the Chief Executive of Wellington NZ, on the Wellington Regional Economic Development Plan, and we will see that in July. And currently the Wairarapa Economic Development Plan is underway, and it is now sitting ready, I think. And is Matt there? No. I thought it was coming to us in June. It is, yeah. So that will come to the councils in June for sign-on. So that's really all I had at this point in time. But I also just wanted to pick up the point again before we close the public and go into public excluded, about a resolution. I did talk about it earlier, withdrawing the civic facility reverse brief and next steps. So what I'd like to do is just adjourn the meeting for about 5 minutes so that we can have a discussion about a date that suits councillors around the table. Then I'll come back in and then I'll put a resolution that we have an extraordinary meeting on that date. Okay, so I'll move that we adjourn the meeting just for, and come back at, let's say, by 4:05. So I'll move that. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Gaffel. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Okay, so we've now adjourned for a few minutes. We just wait till we go off live stream.
See the clock's there.
Sorry?
Yeah, I know.
The clock's up here now.